Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about, is the final shape as hype as it should be, as it was said to be, or is it just a big scam, or is it somewhere in between? Before we get into it, hit the like button, subscribe, comment, all that fun stuff. There's going to be talking about good and bad points about everything to do with the DLC, and then my opinion on it towards the end of the video. Right, let's start off with the basics. I believe the main story mission from when we started in the final shape to when we killed the witness, the excision mission, everything about it is by far the best story Destiny has ever told. And I believe it's because it's a culmination of all these other stories from the past, whereas for me the past stories just felt a little bit complex, a little bit convoluted, and if you wasn't involved with like the lore and really grinding into what the story is, you didn't care about it. However, the Avengers Endgame moment, and goddamn was it an Avengers Endgame moment, Zavala might have shouted Guardians Assemble at some point, just made the past 10 years finish with a nice flourish. And it was very well told, very well written, very well voice acted. And the fact that they got Nathan Fillion back for Cade, and Cade's whole story with Crow and them coming together and being brothers, Cade giving up his life, it was just a perfect story from start to finish. There is absolutely no complaints whatsoever. The aesthetic of all the missions that we played, everything on the Pale Heart, the level design, even the weapon designs and stuff, absolutely phenomenal. They did an incredible job, and I think they put the right amount of resources into making the story special and the world special around it. And looking at the witness, absolutely unbelievable boss fights, absolutely unbelievable character, and just downright amazing. I have no bad feelings towards the story or anything at all of that nature. But now we get into Destiny. Typical Destiny experience, how it has always been and how it probably always will be. First and foremost, the queues, the bugs, everything that should be tested prior to release, and we having to struggle through it and queue for hours to get into the game. Absolutely unacceptable in terms of a consumer, but I'm not a game developer, so I can't really hate on them too much for it because I don't know what goes into that and how to make it. But I figure logically, for someone who has lived on this planet for 37 years, the amount of time they've been creating this game for and making these same problems and issues and having these challenges, you think they would have figured it out by now, or at least made it a little bit more accessible than it is right now. I am so sick and tired of every 30 minutes having to restart my game because everyone's invisible. Like that's just unacceptable regardless of anything. But you know, they're going to definitely go on and fix things like the siege break armor in Eververse before they consider even fixing the invisibility, or things like the NES 003 specimen ID mission missing. Just feels like their priorities are in a certain place. And maybe it's because some people tried to buy it and have spent real life money and they have to fix it. Like, I get that too. But where is the even acknowledgement of the things that people are complaining about? Because there's just nothing. And I know that Bungie have had to kind of quieten themselves on social media because being too open about stuff also leads to problems. But I just feel like they could be handling the problems that we have been facing so far a little bit more openly and better. And while that stuff's important, we're here to talk about the game specifically. So let's start with the Pale Heart. The Pale Heart is an exceptional addition to the game. The idea of it anyway. It's a solo planet, which some people don't like. I don't particularly like it, but it's also fun, fresh and new. And you can see other people occasionally. But the design of it, all the landing zones are unique and different. All the public events and stuff that you have to do are unique and different. It was fun, it was new. Now it's a bit boring and old, because there is absolutely no reason to go there anymore unless you want an ergo sum. But to put the time in to do overthrows for an ergo sum isn't worth it, in my opinion. I don't think the ergo sum is that magnificent of a weapon to chase and grind for. All the little secret things like getting the prismatic fragments and chests and all that fun stuff, it just felt like good old Destiny, but done in a modern way. And they really excelled with that, and it felt almost like you were figuring out secrets and stuff. I'm also a fan of the fact that through Pathfinder and tracking quests, everything is on the map. All these little symbols that are all across the map show you where you need to go to complete something for your Pathfinder, and I think that is a really cool thing to do. It just takes out the idea of, oh, I've got to go and find this now, I need to do this today in the next half an hour. and you can just get it done because you know exactly where to go. Obviously now everybody knows where to go because it's been out long enough, but when it first came out, it was just one of those things where it was like, this is a cool addition, a quality of life improvement. And to talk about Pathfinder, and this is a big topic at the moment. First, let's talk about the Pale Heart Pathfinder. I think this is great. I think everything there is clear and easy to do, and I don't think you really have to go out of your way to specifically grind anything and make it a whole hours long journey. You can clear out a Pathfinder in about 30 minutes and you get somewhat decent rewards. You get an ergo sum twice a week, you get powerful gear, so if you're not base 2000 yet, it's still useful. You get Ghost Reputation rank, but if you've reset him a couple of times, that's pretty useless too. I feel like Pathfinder, even though it's a great addition to the game, has fell on its head very, very quickly, especially for the Pale Heart. Now, when it comes to the Vanguard one, I must say, why the hell is the Pathfinder locked behind like 6 different menus? Why not just put it on the main screen when you press the bloody pause button and get to destinations? Just put the Pathfinder there. But now I have to go into Vanguard and then go down to the bottom corner. It just feels so out of the way. It just feels horrible. I don't know why they did that. But the Pathfinder itself is fine at best. You get some bright dust, you get some enhancement prisms, you get a prime engram. Those are decent rewards for what you're doing. However, in the past, the bright dust was the reason people did bounties, and now you're less likely to get bright dust because of the track that the Pathfinder sends you on. But they have changed this yesterday, I believe, where all the tracks would lead through specific Gambit things, and people didn't want to play Gambit, so they complained. So they've taken Gambit out of the tracks in terms of it won't cut off anything. So you can just go straight through a PvP to PvE and back without having to go through Gambit to be able to get the rewards. However, this just frustrates me. Why not have a Pathfinder for each activity? One for Gambit, one for Vanguard, one for Crucible. That would also solve the fact that you have to go into Vanguard Gambit to get to the Pathfinder, because each one will have their own Pathfinder. So for me, it just makes more sense that if somebody just loves Gambit and only wants to play Gambit, they can get that Pathfinder done. And you can put even more challenging things on the Pathfinder track. But for me now, I feel like the Vanguard Pathfinder is just not worth doing. Yeah, you might pick up a few here and there just by accident because you're just doing stuff that you do in the week. But in general, just not worth it in my opinion. I feel like it was a good idea but executed really badly. I think they did a really good job with making Xur and the cryptarch more important and more, just viable to go to and do things with, especially Xur. I think Xur has finally got a nice little place in the world where it's like, okay, this person feels important again. So the fact that you can go there and even get artifice armor is pretty goddamn cool, and I'm very, very excited to see what else will come with Xur. It might end up being just pointless in a couple of months, but at least it's there. At least it's a thing that's new, fresh, and important as well. The cryptarch having a reputation track for every time you open an exotic engram makes sense and just rewards you for playing the game even more than you already are. And if you want to go farm exotic engrams, you can do that through the playlists and also through going through lost sectors that are legend difficulty or expert difficulty now. I don't know why they changed that, but there's reasons now to go and do things, because if you want to level up the cryptarch and get material rewards and stuff like that, and exotic ciphers I think it gives, I can't even remember, it's just cyclical, intrinsic, and they did a really good job with setting that up. I think Pinnacle rewards are not vast, but I feel like they're more accessible now than they ever have been, even though a lot of them are tied to dungeons and stuff, and I know people don't like to do dungeons if they're a solo player. But even without that, you've got the one from Breach, you've got the one from Expert Breach, you've got the ones from the Enigma Protocol, you've got the Excision mission that also gives you a Pinnacle, which I think is great, and the mission's incredible as well. You've still got the Nightfall Pinnacles, and I might be missing a few more, but in general, as a solo player, I'm happier with the output in terms of Pinnacles. I have also had 3 separate characters, which means I've leveled up quickly, but I do feel like, if they added a couple more Pinnacles in somewhere else, I'd be happy about that too. Very briefly, I just want to say they advertised the new strike as the hardest strike they've ever made. I don't know why they did that, because the strike is boring and easy. Maybe on GM it'll be a little bit more difficult. The only challenging part of it, in my opinion, is running out of the little rooms that are like Indiana Jones traps. Everything else seems fairly straightforward and easy. So I'm very disappointed in the fact how they advertised that strike, and then it was just like, And after you do it in the story mode, I haven't even seen it since. So it's just big yikes from me. For Crucible, I feel like doubles clash and the new 3v3 mode, even competitive to some extent, have all been really good additions to the game. But Crucible is still Crucible. It's still frustrating. It's still being matched up against people who are out of your league tenfold. It's still annoying, and don't even get me started on Trials of Osiris, which I think is just absolutely trash and needs to be reworked in some way, shape or form, especially when it comes to matchmaking against people who are better than you. But I don't want to talk too much about things that are existing in the game for a while. However, the new additions they have made to Crucible I think are pretty cool. And just to finish off the Vanguard activities, Gambit, why is it still here? I know people love it and I get it and I understand, but it's so dry and boring for the majority of people. If you're going to keep Gambit, freshen it up, think about changing it in some way, do something new, have like brand new maps, just do something to make it worth playing, to make it exciting, other than having to go in and do Pathfinder stuff. I have no intention and haven't played Gambit since the final shape released. Okay, let's go on to the mission Dual Destiny. Now, I've already had opinions on this, so I won't ramble on too long about this. The mission design itself, from start to finish, is utterly incredible. One of the best missions, one of the best pieces of content that Bungie have ever added to the game. But for solo players, casual players, people with anxiety and social challenges, it's completely just not playable. Oh, but you can use LFG. Let me just tell you something. Because you've had a good experience on LFG doesn't mean everybody does. People get kicked for literally no reason. And it's just a hateful, vitriolic place. And that's all I'll leave that at. So, Dual Destiny, pretty goddamn awesome, amazing. The fact that a specific, unique item that's new and fresh and different, that doesn't affect the game in a large scale, is locked behind that mission is very disappointing. Because the fact that, you know, if you put it into the pale chests at a 2% drop rate for solo casual players to get it, if they did get it, it doesn't affect you in any way, shape or form. You can still play that mission. You can grind out 5 an hour while someone else who's on the pale heart gets 1 every hour and a half. It doesn't affect your game whatsoever. But I'm not going to get further into that. I've already spoke about it. The raid. I haven't played the raid myself. I've watched it. It seems so utterly complex on first viewing that it doesn't inspire me to want to play it and do it. Now, I don't do many raids at all. In fact, the last raid that I did was, I mean, properly did and properly farmed, was probably Leviathan. I'm not a raid player. However, every single raid that has come out that I've watched, I was like, I really want to do this. I really want to play this. It looks fun. It looks interesting. And the rewards are good. With this raid, it just feels like it's a chore more than anything. And I guess when you learn it and you understand it, it becomes so easy to do that you don't think that it's that complex. Obviously, the more you know, the easier it becomes. But on a first time viewing and specifically a first time playing, it just feels like hell on earth, especially with the contest mode. When I was watching people doing that, I felt sick watching them do it. I had to turn off because I was like, I can't see people going through this frustration because it impacts me. And for me, that's not a very good design. Now, aesthetically and mechanically in some areas, it seems really cool and different, but the whole raid as a whole just feels like it's just not attainable for me specifically, and I think a lot of people too. I do want to do it and I probably will do it, but for the most part, it's just, it makes me feel sick even thinking about doing it, if that makes sense. Even though I want to do it, it makes me feel sick thinking about doing it. Okay, now let's talk about episodes. We are already at the end of Act 1, story mode. While the story mode was good with failsafe and Saint 14, and it's setting up to be something very exciting in the conductor, the fact that now we have to wait 20 days to get any more story is utterly ridiculous. Episodes are seasons, but with more time gating. Now, I like the idea of the season pass being through different acts, because that gives you more reason to buy a season pass because you get more rewards, and as well, it's not all just going to disappear straight away in the first month of the game. Like, I understand that side of it, but for the story side of it, utterly just abysmal decision. 3 weeks, and this week's one was just over so quick I don't even remember what happened. I believe there was more for me when Osiris and Saint 14 were talking to each other in front of failsafe. I think that lasted longer than the quest to kill the boss, if I remember rightly. I don't even remember doing half of that quest because it was so just done and easy and finished. I was very disappointed in the third week because the first 2 weeks I actually quite enjoyed, but the third week was just abysmal. Even though the story of it and setting up for the future was great, the actual mission was awful. And I'm very disappointed that they made these like big changes to this seasonal structure, except they made it worse in my opinion. And last but not least, the saving grace of the whole DLC, Prismatic. Now, I've spoken about it before, and I think Transcendence within Prismatic is an absolute gimmick and just is completely pointless, because I now have to build up light and dark to pop Transcendence to shoot one enemy with one bullet to remove their extra shield, and that's all that Prismatic is for. I don't think it's a good thing. It's different, but I just don't think it's worth putting into the game, in my opinion, unless you change Transcendence to affect other things on your subclass, like your super, or be able to equip different grenades, have a different Transcendent melee. I just feel like it's very gimmicky for Transcendence itself. Prismatic as a whole, and being able to choose and set up your class with new fragments that affect so many different things, have different abilities, use light and dark at the same time. Absolutely phenomenal choice and decision and design as well. However, I really do hope they keep it fresh by swapping in and out abilities and supers for season to season, or act to act, I should say, or even episode to episode. Because if they were to change the abilities and supers, it would keep it fresh, it would keep it feeling unique and fun. I feel like it could get quite boring quite quickly with a lot of builds, like my Hunter, punch, invisible, dodge, punch, invisible, dodge, punch, invisible, dodge. While it's fun, it's also just like, oh, is this all that I have to offer as this character? I want to change things up, I want to do different things, and you can do that, but it's not worth it because it's so goddamn easy. So if they change up some of the abilities and some of the fragments and stuff like that as you're going through the game, excellent. But Prismatic does pose a problem, because for the most part there's no point in using the base subclasses anymore at all, with the exception of Titan Bubble and Well of Radiance. Just doesn't feel like there's any point in not being on Prismatic, which is a shame, because I feel like those subclasses and stuff should have some kind of boost or something to make it viable outside of Prismatic, so you don't always have to use Prismatic. But overall, Prismatic, phenomenal. Absolutely love it. Best decision they've ever made in the game, in my opinion. So this brings me back to the original question: is the final shape a scam? I don't think it is. I don't think it is. I feel like it's just teetering on worth buying. Like I said, if I was to buy any DLC in retrospect for however much it costs for anyone around the world in your countries and stuff, I think this is the one that you buy. This is the one that's worth the money and the time to put into it. There are some glaring things that need to be fixed and changed, but overall I think that it's just a phenomenal experience. I think it's a phenomenal story. I think they've made the game a lot better, and I hope that with this success that they go on to do more things like this. But I also hope that they weed out all the bugs and errors and maybe think more about solo casual players as well. That's just my personal preference, but I do think it's a good DLC. And I'm the biggest critic of Bungie and Destiny. I always have been, but I can't do it with the final shape. I think overall it's a positive experience. For me personally, as a solo casual player, it's like a 7 out of 10. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's like a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 for a lot of people who get to experience all of the content because they're not a solo player. Let me know what you think about the game and its current state down below in the comments section. I hope you sat through and watched all this. If you did, I love you and appreciate you. Thank you for watching. I have been Easy. Now you guys have been awesome.